Welcome back to the Builder's Bench. I'm Craig Larkins. Municipal elections may not get the same attention as federal or provincial politics, but City Hall has a big say in what gets built, how long it takes, and what it costs. That's why VRCA launched the Build Lower Mainland campaign, putting the cost to build, time to build, and people to build at the center of the conversation. So joining me today on the bench is Stewart Prest, a lecturer in political science at the University of British Columbia. Stewart, welcome to the bench.
Good to be with you. Thanks for having me on.
Of course. So we're going to be talking all things municipal election. It is obviously happening on October 17th. That's coming up quick. So first question right out of the gate, Stewart, is, municipal elections, I just mentioned that in the intro there, they get less attention than our friends in Ottawa and Victoria, federal provincial races. Why should voters care more about the municipal election and what happens at City Hall?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's right out of some of the conversations I have in the classroom with my students, because we pay attention to the national story, the international story, what's happening often farthest away from where we are, because that's what grabs the headlines. It's what drives the news cycle. It has that attention factor. But when we think about how we live our lives, and I do this with my students just about every time I teach Politics 100, think about how you got to the classroom today. Think about how you are going to conduct yourself, communications with people in your community, how you're going to spend your time after class, going to your job after school, if you have one, all the things that you do in your daily life, many of them run right through City Hall. That's the place where those decisions can take it, even where you live, whether you have a chance to live anywhere close to campus or in the vicinity of your work, or if you are commuting multiple hours a day. In some cases, the students coming in from south of the Fraser, that's a long commute, and that is a function of city government decisions in cooperation with other levels of government. But how we live is the matter that matters for municipal government, and yet we only seem to pay attention to it when it doesn't work. That's when it gets people's attention.
Perfectly said. And, it's all around us, the built environment. And obviously, at VRCA, we have 1,000+ member companies. Construction is our main focus. It has been the main focus of the past, the provincial election, the federal election. So we're hoping to ride that wave as we head into the fall. So how much control do municipalities have over what gets built, and how fast and at what cost?
It's a good question. I don't think it has a single simple answer, because clearly there are limits on what city councils can do. There is a matter of demand to put up new housing and additional development. There are questions regarding access to capital that's going to be outside the scope of the city government. But essentially, linking the different sides together, that's where city council and municipal government really can make a difference, for better or for worse. Every municipality is going to play a prominent role in putting in place the bylaw structure to spell out specific zoning. In a place like Vancouver, it is within a larger strategy set forth by Metro Vancouver in cooperation with the other mayors. So you have to pay attention to that larger environment, but that's still the municipal level, just a different expression of it. And so that can go a long way towards putting in place a framework that really enables a quick response time when there is demand, that the industry is able to meet that demand, or really slowing things down and having multiple levels of bureaucracy effectively to ensure that building is being done in a way that is consistent with the competing demands of a complex municipal environment. But at times that can create a kind of layering effect where the things can really be slowed down. And some of the ways in which Vancouver tends to be somewhat unusual, having its own building bylaw code, for instance, is a reflection of the fact that it's a different place than the rest of the province. But it can also be a way that things can kind of get bogged down in the way that they have been done over time. So city council can step in to try to streamline those processes, but it is amid this larger historical context, and amid the competing forces of the economic demand. And beyond that, then there is the role of the provincial government in empowering city councils, and in some cases, as we have seen recently here in BC, really putting pressure on city councils to move more quickly. So it is a complex environment.
And there lies the reason to pay attention to municipal politics is the amount of power that you just spoke to. So we've been seeing a lot of funding announcements from the federal side of things, the Build Baby Build movement, the province also getting on board with funding where we're talking development cost charges, housing, billions of dollars being promised. It seems to ramp up before the election. So why does that happen, and how often do we actually see that money flowing? The buck stops in the municipalities most times. How often do we get to see that money actually doled out to the communities?
It's a good question because certainly one of the tried and true strategies in particularly provincial federal elections, I think the municipal level can be a little bit different. I want to come back to that in a second, but explaining to the people that we're going to get things done. We are the party that can get things done, and that often means spending money where it is needed. Making that argument that is one of the ways in which provincial governments can win re-election, and that is something that governments in particular can do, given that they have control of the budget heading into the election. They're the ones who can decide, and so provincial governments, federal governments will make those commitments. Now is the time when we're going to solve problems that we haven't been able to solve up until this point, giving voters a reason to trust them again, even if they are still frustrated with where politics are. That doesn't always follow through. For instance, in housing specifically, the federal government, the Liberal government, did make commitments to really expand its investment in social housing, working with cities and provinces to try to build out the amount of social housing in the country. We have seen since the election those commitments significantly cut back, nearly cut in half. So you do have to follow through from the initial promise to see whether the money actually gets out the door, because certainly circumstances change, and we know Canada is under more pressure than ever economically, politically on the international scene. So there can be reasons why governments change priority, but that sometimes means that the initial promises are not fulfilled.
Yeah, we actually often speak to a new word that we learned this year, and that was repacing from the provincial side of things. So how can voters, VRCA members, tell the difference between, there's the money promised, there's the money allocated, and then the projects that are actually ready to build? There was a lot of, when I was speaking to the repacing, hospitals, personal care homes and such that were on the table, and now it seems to be repaced, as the provincial government likes to say.
Yeah, again, this is not a question that has a single simple answer. To a certain extent, it is a function of changing circumstances. The BC NDP made it clear that they really did want to invest in bricks and mortar solutions to some longstanding problems for healthcare, but also for things like student housing. Really trying to build out quickly where they are able to put in place longer term solutions to these perennial problems, these kind of wicked problems that the province has been facing. But of course, circumstances can change, and in this case, we have the real economic headwinds that Canada in general, and BC in particular, has run into since the arrival of Donald Trump 2.0. That has been a significant factor. It's not the only factor, though. We also have long-term effects of inflation over the post-COVID era that is continuing to bite at government's ability to make good on promises that they felt pretty comfortable with a couple of years ago. So that is playing out, and governments over time can feel they need to respond to a different kind of imperative. So the BC NDP is clearly feeling that they perhaps have gone too far with some of these spending commitments, even though they haven't really gone to fruition to achieve the ends that they were hoping for in terms of dealing with affordability of housing, access to healthcare. And I would not be surprised if we see further repacing, in particularly in this next budget, while they still have a couple of years to right the ship and hit that note of, here we're spending money again in the run up to the election. You often will see governments try to sequence things so the pain comes after the election, where they still have a couple of years to make it right, and then they make good on their promises. Coming back to the idea of municipal government sometimes marching to a different drum, in the run-up to this election here in the fall, it is fascinating to see how a major plan like the Villages plan crashed and burned very publicly in one of the final meetings of council for the year before at least before the election. That is a reminder that pressures on municipal government can be quite different than at other levels of government. Here we see municipal councillors responding to the sense that people who are paying attention are worried about the character of their neighborhoods changing, and that we hear, as much as people want to say we want more housing, we don't want more housing here or here or here or here in each of the villages being proposed. So it turned into a kind of sitting duck for complaints about densification in particular neighborhoods, and trying to position themselves for the municipal fall election. It seemed clear that most councillors, not just ABC, but notably including ABC, which was trying to drive the bus on this initially, said actually this was not a good idea. We need to go back and do something different. Again, trying to tell the voters what they want to hear, but in this case, it's actually we need to tap the brakes. And so that can open up opportunities for a party like One City that was saying we should still go ahead. The city needs this. We need it for a larger picture. And One City was really alone on that score.
It's interesting, just the villages as a prime example of the power of people's voices and speaking up. And, that's the same thing that can happen at the polls when you show up. It's the power of the people. And that's a prime example of that. I don't want that in my neighborhood. So a lot of these people were vocal to it.
And just to pick up on that one additional point, the people who take part in consultations are not the same people who vote. I mean, the people who are in consultations, they're definitely going to vote. But
Yes.
the voting demographic, the voting electorate, that's a much larger group of people who perhaps only dip in during the elections to make their voices heard. And even though turnout for municipal elections is lower than at the provincial and federal level, and that's unfortunate. The decisions, just as we said, affect you even more in many ways. But that number is going to be much larger than those who are involved in the actual consultation process. And so parties do have to be careful that they are not only listening to the squeaky wheel when it comes to things like development, because there are when we're not building additional housing, when we're not building additional services, there is going to be an unmet need there, and that can come back to bite them come election.
So let's dive into the municipal election. I mean, I've covered elections in my past careers. I've participated in campaigns. This election, there seems to be a lot of attention already out of the gate that started happening in the early beginnings of 2026. Is that normal for this type of election? What are you seeing out there? What can you tell us about where we're at right now?
I think this is a continuation, an exaggeration of a trend we have seen for some time. We did see in the final year of Vision, for instance, the moment that Gregor Robertson said he was not going to run again, that kind of opened up a longer electoral season. But that was still at if memory serves, at the beginning of the election year. So that was maybe at like a 9-8 month campaign, much of that informal. Then we had the formal campaign just at the very end. It feels like we've been in this electoral cycle for a year already. We have had the arrival of the Vancouver Liberals, Karim Alam, really making a splash in the way he tried to create a new party and a new channel to victory, and sort of down the middle, out of whole cloth, and trying a strategy that has been tried before and has not worked. But he seems to be making a little more headway there than previous attempts. And beyond that, we had other parties seeming to respond to that early campaign move, so that we have had positioning, campaign battles, nomination battles playing out through the latter part of 2025 into 2026. And along with that, additional fundraising appeals as well. And I think that is one of the factors that matters here, given the way in which fundraising is regulated now at the municipal level. By starting your campaign in a different year, you can actually get 2 contributions from your core supporters, and that can matter a lot when the individual donation limits are now in effect. There's a cap on donations for the municipal level, something that we did not see in the earlier, more Wild West era of municipal.
So I have a question about polls, actually, polling numbers. We've had a couple come out where Mayor Sim is leading, and you have Vancouver Liberals, Mr. Allam in second place. There's a lot of conflicting polls. What is your opinion? And they're obviously they reported on the media and general public absorb that. What's your take on the polls?
they can be indicative of trends that we can see. So if somebody is really languishing, that can be bad news that they're really not breaking through, and it can be an indicator of who's really going to drop out of the conversation. Who is leading a poll in early August, mid August, is not going to tell us who is going to win the election, because we do have a significant share of the population, just as we were talking about, who are not paying close attention. This end of August season, as much as people could have been following for the last year, most people are not. And so this is where they're starting to pay attention a little bit more, and to find out what the options are. Some people wait even later than that, making up their minds in the last week. If they have just a certain amount of time, people, as much as municipal politics matter, a lot of things matter in people's lives, so they're only going to give it some time. So we can know something about who is competitive and who is not. But beyond that, we have to see how the campaign.
It's interesting you just mentioned that, things are really starting to ramp up now, and the candidates, municipal parties are out door knocking, and it's your opportunity to have that one-on-one conversation. So, yes. So if people are listening right now, Stewart, what should voters watch for between now and Election Day?
Again, it's a great question. We have a number of different indicators, really paying attention to what the candidates do in open settings like debates. That's an obvious place to start. Looking for what the debates are available to you, so you can see the candidates in person. You get a sense of what they're saying and what they believe, and how they actually respond in a live setting. That can be really valuable. Listening to different media accounts, not just getting your information from the candidates themselves. Certainly pay attention to what they're saying, but also trying to diversify your information so that you're not just relying on one voice to guide you. And it's certainly fine if you have a particular observer of politics that you think is trustworthy, and it's a good guideline, but ultimately you want to make sure the decision is yours. So looking for multiple sources of information and trying to find out what do the different candidates, the different parties say on the issues that really matter to you, and then go in and make up your mind. Don't just take any one person's word for it.
That's such a great point, Stewart. So let's end on a lighter note. What's the most interesting thing you have seen happen during an election, or the interesting results of an election?
So I'm always fascinated when we have these near dead heats, and so elections. I'd have to go back and look. You put me on the spot here a little bit. But, in some jurisdictions, when the election is an actual tie, sometimes it's broken by the chief electoral officer casting their ballot. More fun though is when it's decided by a coin flip, and so
Wow.
yeah, I'd have to go back and look the exact examples, but there have been elections that are actually determined by a flip of a coin. They're just literally too close to call, and rather than vacate the election, as we saw recently at the federal level, actually just flip a coin, and then people have to live with the result. And somehow feels random, but in a way that makes it clear this one was just too close to call, and yet somebody has to win.
Now that is interesting. Thank you for sharing that, Stewart. Stewart, thank you for joining us and for helping us take a look beyond the campaign promises with this election. Definitely looking forward to possibly having you back on the podcast as we get closer to Election Day on October 17th. Stewart Prest is a lecturer in political science at the University of British Columbia. To learn more about VRCA's Build Lower Mainland campaign, you can visit buildlowermainland.ca, and you can find past episodes of The Builder's Bench on VRCA's website. I'm Craig Larkins, and this is The Builder's Bench.